Hi, I'm Charles Mandel from Helmar Brewing, and I have here a very special guest. Why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Nick DiNatale, and I run a baseball garment company called Local 9. I
What's the website address?
The website is localnineco.com, and you can also find us on Instagram at LocalNineco, Facebook, by searching Local 9, and Twitter at Local9Co. But Instagram and the website are the best ways to keep up with what I'm up to.
And you make beautiful hats, authentic style hats, and custom made, and also what, uniform tops.
Really, anything baseball, I am open to making. But yeah, a lot of jerseys, caps are an art that I am still perfecting. But I would say right now jerseys are my favorite thing to make. I hope to do. I would look forward to exploring all kinds of other options for baseball garments and fabrics that our baseball team.
The hat you've got is great.
Well, thank you. I figured I had to wear it.
Had to wear a
this,
Detroit hat for being in Detroit. You were telling me a little bit before about the embroidery of the logo, the D.
Mm-hmm.
How long did that really take you?
So this is my first real try at freehand embroidery. And it ended up taking probably 3 or 4 hours. And maybe to some people that are a little more used to, that are more practiced in embroidery, that might sound like a lot. But it was my first try. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun. It did not feel like 4 hours necessarily, but looking back, it took a while.
I mean, it looks great. And one of the things I like about it is it doesn't look perfect. You know, it looks handmade. It looks crafted. Did a great job on the whole hat.
And that's whenever I'm looking at old baseball photos, just seeing the discrepancies between different logos on different uniforms of players from the same exact year, like the same cap. The D is different for different players.
I see that all the time
because it was hand done. And I think that that's something that's really tends to be lost nowadays.
Absolutely. And you're from Massachusetts, right?
I am, yeah.
From Lowell.
Lowell, yep.
Which was where the Industrial Revolution started here in this country with textiles. So It's interesting that you're from a place with that sort of history.
Yeah.
How much did that play a part in your...
So it didn't. I sort of realized, like, after I started making my first jerseys just for me, that I'm in this place where this is such a part of the history, and I'm also like doing this. I'm learning it myself. It was an interesting coincidence. I did the textile tours as a kid and everything, and learned a lot about that. I don't remember any of it at this point because I was probably 8 at the time. But we have a national park there dedicated to the history, the boarding houses and the factories. They have like working looms and all kinds of really, really incredible stuff. So it's a cool thing to think about, like making something that's so ingrained in the history of.
So you said you like making the uniform tops the best?
Yeah. And I think it's nice because it's a big piece that really gets people's attention. Like when you wear one,
Well, the pictures I saw were just awesome. I mean, where do you get the material? I mean, and what material do you?
It's all wool flannel. I try to source everything 100% wool. Occasionally you'll get blends, but blends did start to appear as the 20th century wore on. It was not always 100% wool. But I try to buy 100% wool. I'll go to the ends of the earth to find
Find the right material.
The right material, yeah. And I get it from a local mill store in New Hampshire. Name of the that's but it's a small town up there. And the company used to do their own production of wool until it was early 60s when the mill shut down, and ever since they work with other mills, both domestic and foreign, in US, Mexico, and area, if I remember correctly. And they
So you source the most authentic material that you can get.
Yeah.
And you're producing the items using authentic traditional methods, or at least as close as you can get.
Yeah. I have several different sewing machines from the early 20th century.
And you use those early 20th century machines to make the...
Yeah.
Wow, that's very neat. Great. Huh.
Yeah. I joke that using the machines is as much fun for me as actually making the garments is, because it's just machinery is just really fascinating. I'm certainly no expert as far as like disassembling and reassembling them, but watching them work is really fascinating, and a part of what I do that I really enjoy.
It's all part of the mystique.
Yeah.
The extra labor is definitely worth it.
Yeah.
And you do a lot of research on the logos and everything, correct?
Yeah. And I'm sure you are
we do
quite
with the cards.
familiar.
Yes.
But you can really get lost in doing that.
Yes.
And just finding out things. I think one of my favorite stories that I've come across just by doing, I think this started by doing research for a client who wanted to recreate their great grandfather's a sweater that he had worn for a town baseball team, specifically an athletic club in Brooklyn. And I had found like a bunch of clippings about him, and somehow I got to doing some of my own research, and this ended up over a period of like 5 hours, and came across a team called the Philadelphia Colored Giants, who they were from Philadelphia, but they were based in Boston. And that was a really interesting story. Cannonball Jackman was a really, really fantastic pitcher that doesn't get a lot of recognition. But there's not a lot of black baseball history in Boston, seemingly. But then when you dig enough, it really is. So finding out about that was just a fun side detail of doing research. And
how do you, from those old black and white photos, how do you determine what colors?
Well, some of it is guesswork when you really can't, when there's no way of knowing, especially when a town wasn't covered heavily, if they were just a really local town, but also by looking at old catalogs from Spalding. There's a handful of different old sample kits that they would have sent out that are still floating around on the internet.
Really?
That I'm sure in like private collections that had fabric samples, and it's actually, there's a pretty limited amount of colors that were used in old baseball jerseys. Like you got your cardinal reds, your royal blues, maybe a green, but then lots of gray, black, navy blue, and colors like that, and white, of course. So it's guesswork, but also it's educated guesswork.
And so once you have decided on the colors and the style from the photos, what's your next step? How do you go about doing it?
Well, so with the research, that also, it's not just colors and like what the lettering looks like and stuff. It also his construction.
You hand cut out the letters?
I do, yeah. Letters which are generally felt. I hand cut them all. So
that's a lot of work.
Spend a lot of time with scissors. And I hand cut the jerseys as well. But with the research, there's sometimes it feels like there are so many different options that existed for styles and stuff between like underarm gussets and is there an underarm gusset or not. That's a little patch that would go underneath the player's armpit. Sometimes with grommets, yep, to vent. And I would imagine probably the reason for them also was to probably ripping armpits. I would imagine would have happened. But looking at the different constructions, it seems like there's so many, but you know, you have the different collar types. There's like sun collar, cadet collar, no collar at all, or like a traditional collar like this. And you can kind of, as you look at them more and more, you can recognize different patterns. And, you know, like this is the Spalding from the early teens, and they generally will have the same construction. So you're asking where I went after the research, and I'm still talking about research. So at that point, I start. I would have to get some measurements for whoever is ordering and make sure it's going to fit them right. And from there, I would make a pattern to fit that person, and then I would start cutting and start rough assembly.
So if someone hires you to do a uniform, how long is it before you're able to do it? Sounds like there's so much work.
Usually it's I say 4 to 6 weeks. Usually it's a little closer to 6 as of right now, because I'm still getting everything like down to a real science. But yeah, so.
And you did a jacket.
Yeah, an old warm up sweater jacket.
That was awesome. I'd like to show.
Thank you. Yeah, that was my first knitted project. My partner Molly taught me how to knit. She likes for me to mention that, and it is well deserved, because I'm not easy to teach things to. I want to kind of go my own way. Right. But it was a huge help, and I would never have been able to knit without having someone showing me. But yeah, so I learned to knit mostly because I wanted to make one of those sweaters. And there aren't many out there. Mitchell and Ness did them for a very brief point in time in the 90s, but they weren't like a feasible product because they were so expensive because of the amount of wool that it involved to make one, and how expensive they had to be. But it's something that people really react to, like whenever they see, like on Instagram, and I see an old picture of a baseball team and someone's wearing a sweater, there's always a comment that is like, that sweater, like that's incredible.
I've noticed that making cards, players in sweaters seem to generate so much interest.
Yeah, it's you know, it was replaced by like the bomber jacket. And
what about the Mackinaws? I see pictures of guys with the plaid Mackinaw jackets around 1910 or something like that. They'd have all these plaid things, big heavy things, and everybody in the team would have the same.
The Boston Braves had one,
yes,
I believe. It was right after they had won their world championship.
There's a lot of pictures of that team. Right, with that.
Those jackets are incredible. I would love to sometime down the road.
I've looked at those, and I just despair at trying to figure out the colors on some of those. I mean, that's impossible.
For that particular jacket, there's actually
there is one.
Someone has one,
yes,
somewhere in the world.
One. I have seen color pictures of that one, but most of the others, I can only imagine
Yeah.
what they look like. But
And
they were very cool. They didn't last very long.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, they were very, like, even more striking than a sweater. Yeah, I don't know why they didn't. Maybe they were just too expensive for teams to be handing out.
It could well be.
Because
you don't see any Charles Kaminsky White Sox wearing those.
yeah, yeah. I think that there
The
were
cheaper team owners.
yeah.
Hmm.
I'm sure they made the players pay for them.
So, what type of person commissions you to make one?
There's a pretty wide range of people that I've had contact me so far. Everyone from like really serious collectors, to people that just want to connect with maybe a baseball story that's been passed down in their family. Whether it's like a great grandfather that had played or something like that, or even just a more casual fan that maybe inherited baseball like as being a fan from like a father or grandfather or whoever. It's
been passed down to the love of baseball, and your product, I mean, quality and everything that'll be passed down.
Yeah,
to the next generation.
Yeah, making
next generation
something that is worth holding on to is something that I really like being able to do.
Yes, absolutely.
Great, and something that's different. Whether it's different because each one is like slightly different from the next, or just different because you don't see as much wool around anymore.
Right.
Especially in athletic wear.
Right. Oh, what a great chance to put together technology, the workmanship and still the creativity to bring it all together. It's a great job.
I always thought that there was no crossover between art and sports, but I found out that I was pretty wrong with that, especially meeting people like you, who art is what you do, and maybe making garments isn't what people think of when they think of art, but it's absolutely, I look at it as an art form.
I would agree.
There's so many people that do great baseball art. You just have to around and find them eventually.
So what are your plans going forward?
My plans going forward, I think, are to just keep researching. Every day I manage to find out something new about uniform construction, or a different uniform that I didn't know existed, or a team that I never knew existed. I mean, just as a baseball fan, I get to keep learning and keep meeting people. And as I meet people, then I think that there are more people out there that probably would hopefully appreciate what I do.
So you don't want to be like a big Burlington house?
No, I do not want to have it be much more than
14,000 employees.
I'm happy. I'm happy with it being just me for right now, with some very specific that support me. My parents, who have helped.
Yeah, what do they think about this?
They just they don't understand how I can make something from nothing. That's always cool, and I think that's given how garments are made nowadays. That's, I think, something that is shared by like a lot of people. You don't really see people making garments all the time. It just kind of shows up in a store and it's in front of you to buy, or online or wherever. So to actually be able to make something from just a bolt of fabric is impressive, I think. Like a lot of people.
That human connection, it just makes it special, as opposed to some bolt material running through 12 machines and spitting out
an assembly line.
Yes.
And, and it's for me, it's really satisfying to know that people are actually wearing something that I like put like
Yes.
hours into making. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. So I don't foresee Local 9 becoming much more than like a couple of people that work on. I like to have my hand in everything because I'm a perfectionist, I guess, which is both a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, I know how that works.
Yeah.
So it's local9.com, right?
Local9co.com.
Local9co.com.
9 was a company or something in another country at one point.
Really?
The domain was gone. So local9co.com and at local9co pretty much anywhere else that might be on the internet.
What else would you like to add?
Definitely check out Helmar Brewing Company and their cards because Charles does fantastic work with those, and even just looking at those cards are very inspiring for what I do. And on days when I don't feel like I can be a good creative, I can just look at other people's work and be inspired to hopefully go and make something.
You have to do it. It's a everyday thing. I mean,
yeah.
You gotta, whether you feel like it or you're inspired or not.
Yeah.
And
I guess the only other thing with Local 9 is that whether it's a team that actually existed, a team that you have no idea what their uniform looked like, I'd try to make it. And there may be a picture out there. Research is both fun and frustrating.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of baseball history that we haven't found out about yet.
There's always more.
Yeah.
Well, it's so great to meet someone else in the vintage baseball with some creativity together.
Yeah.
Always refreshing what's out there, and fantastic to me.
Yeah,
not a whole lot of us.
You as well. It's been so great to talk about baseball, and baseball with an artistic mind is something that's like rare. So.
Thanks again.
Thank you.